Welcome everyone to this event, Women Raise the Bar. I think all of us, we've been looking forward and we're really excited to launch this community of strong women. And this is not an hazard if we have set this date today, because today is actually International Women Entrepreneurship Day. And I believe we have a strong profile of entrepreneurs among us today. So to maybe give you a little bit more context about how this idea came on the table, I will have to introduce a little about myself. So I'm originally from France, as Jama was mentioning, and it's been a year for me to be part of one in India, but also a year for me to be part of this hospitality and alcohol bev industry. And even though I'm pretty much new in that industry, it did not take me so long to realize that it's a very highly male-dominated industry. So besides that, I've met a lot of women working behind the bars, and obviously they've shared their stories, their successes, but they also share with me some of the challenges that they were facing on the daily basis. And I mean, obviously, in a strongly male-dominated industry, it's sometimes a bit tough for women. They face more difficulty in terms of accessing leadership roles, in terms of visibility, and many other aspects that we're going to discuss today during this roundtable. So to make it clear, we are doing this community launch because our mission today is to create, as Jama was mentioning, a platform where the women can connect together, they can elevate each other, they can mentor each other. And I think you'll be strongly supporting this, because as leading women in that industry, you'll be inspiring this new generation of women. So they will give their voice in growing this community. And the long-term vision that we have through this community building is to, no matter what is your gender, everybody should have the same access to opportunities in terms of leadership, in terms of growth, and in terms of lead. So that's why we believe through our unity, through building this community, we can all make it together, we can rise together. So let's raise the bar together. And so for Monil, we do this, we take this initiative from a CSR angle, and we commit to help and support this community on the long term by organizing events every quarter. It can be roundtables, it can be workshop, it can be any type of events. And we started to do different type of platforms as well. We will discuss this a little later. So for now, I'm going to leave the room to our wonderful panel today to present themselves, to maybe share with us what is your story in the hospitality, what was your journey about, and maybe if you can share with us why did you want to be part of that movement, Women Raise the Bar. So we can start.
So good afternoon, everyone present over here. So my name is Deepika, and I am currently working in Lair as a bartender. So I started my journey 2 years back with the cocktail bar in GK2, where I learned all the fundamentals and all the basics of alcohol there. And then I switched to Lair a year back. So there I was the part, and I was the part of the new opening property, which gave me the valuable experience in launching a new bar. And then I took part in various competitions and winning the Do It With Doers competition to become the Modern Cup 2024 finalist. That's all about my journey. And if I talk about why I'm doing this, or why I'm the part of this, the conference table, is that that I believe that the talent and passion is not only the gender biased. Okay, so everyone should we know that our industry is a male dominated industry, and it's a high time that women should know, women should empower herself to be in a leadership role. Okay, so then we have this we can so what we want, that our industry to be a more inclusive, more diverse, and which benefits everyone. So yeah, that's why.
Thank you so much.
So when I started my journey, there were very few bartenders. I can name them. Shadru ma'am, there's one more Emu shop. And there were very few, only few girls. It was up entirely boys. So I questioned myself, this is a job where why only boys are behind the bars? Why can't a girl can do it? So I went to the bar manager. I asked him that why there are only boys, why not girls? He said, yeah, this is a profession mainly done by boys and there are very few women. As in only 2 or 3 in the entire country. It is like in this, I'm talking about the year 2018, 2019, like 7, 8 years back. So then I asked him, he said, okay, if you give me 5 classics overnight and come to me tomorrow, I'll take you behind the bar. And then the entire night, I learned only about the cocktails and then with history and everything. The next morning, I went to him. I asked him that now I'm prepared with 5 classics. You ask me whatever you want. He asked me these questions, and then immediately on the next day, I was rostered in the bar. And then my journey as a bartender started. And now I'm leading a bar. I have done no professional course, nothing. It's all through fashion and learning and having good mentors.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And maybe what can be one of your motivation to be part of this community today? Is there a specific reason for it? Not that you want to support that movement, this community?
Yeah, of course. Now there are many girls who are working, but yes, there are still there. There are many girls who are not yet, not yet that I'm into say not yet famous. Maybe that will be, or not yet known to many people. But yes, there are various opportunities like Monin, like other brands are coming and then focusing on women entrepreneurship and leadership, and many girls are becoming an influencers and motivating like Meenakshi ma'am, Shatdilal. It is a very proud moment for me to sharing a stage with them, and yes, on that cue, old people's lobby are there with young ones and topic. Oh, chippurishes. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Meenakshi Singh. I'm the co-founder of 3 bars, based out of Delhi, Gurgaon. My journey has been interesting. I did my hotel management and then I got into bartending. And then when I realized that it's not legal for girls to bartend, I got out of the bar, obviously. And then I found sort of a sweet spot in the liquor industry where I could still interact, I could still wait trains, I could still talk about drinks. Maybe I had not necessarily served drinks. And it was mainly driven by passion. Like, what even Deepika was saying, it's not about, passion is not about, not gender related. Love for the industry is nothing to do with the gender. And I feel even skill and talent is not gender, right? It's not genderless. So, I realized at that time I didn't see myself as an anomaly, as an exception. I just saw myself as this person who's having a great time. And I feel the baseline of it was that I was every day very, very excited to go to work. And I think if that is where the key, differentiation is mostly in any industry, if you're driven by passion, if you're driven by love, and our industry is very like that. Otherwise, why would you break your back for a purpose 1 week or off? And it's crazy time. I mean, you have to have some real love for this industry to do this. I think you will make much more money in some other industry, in chilling and working or whatever. Not to put any other industry down, but we understand how challenging physically, mentally, emotionally it can be. And at that time that I moved to liquor industry, I worked for some bigger companies, and I was really lucky to initially, in my early days, interact with some amazing people, including Shaddi ma'am. And I feel like I could really at close quarters see how she conducted herself, I met Yanzo Plama, I met people who were getting there or already there, but our industry was also just growing. It was just kind of, I wouldn't say it was already there, it was kind of, in a space where industry was just about people who were coming in, the brands were coming in, the bars were sort of only in 5-star hotels you would see any freestanding bars at that time, except TGIF kind of formats. So it was a very interesting time for our industry as well. And I got great mentors and great people in my life at that time. And I worked, sorry to use my French, asshole. I remember not taking ops
for many, many months straight. And I'm not absolutely advocating that anymore. It's not healthy. But I felt like that was the time and moment for me. And I really took it with all my love and all my hands and legs. And then I continued doing that in the liquor industry as well. And then I got an opportunity in 2012 to open our first bar, Cocktails of Dream Speakeasy with Yamrup. Yamrup was already a tabloid bartender, well-known mixologist, author, and both of us ran the bar together. And then the next bar that he opened was Saiptar, and now I'm looking out of okay. And now I'm on a very exciting journey, and I feel I'm learning every day, and I'm here today to learn all of this again all over. To I feel like all of us have that opportunity today, and we should always take that opportunity. And why I'm here in this space, and what really motivates me is the interaction and the learning that we can take back, and hopefully we can share that with our outer world, and it will open up our mind, right? Hopefully tomorrow will be a better day.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Shadbi.
Hi, I'm Shadbi Basu, and I think I've had the most amazing journey. I've been doing what I love for more than 4 decades, and that's long. But it's been fantastic. I think for me, I didn't see the difference between man and woman because I was raised in a house that said you can do whatever you want. And so for me, it started as just being really good at what you do as a professional after doing 3 years of hotel management, from wanting to be a chef to being shunted out of the kitchen into working in the restaurant space, and then suddenly one day being told that, oh, you're supposed to manage the bar as well. It was a journey of discovery. And I think when I made my first drink, that was my really big eureka moment to say, why on earth would I want to work in the kitchen? No way, man, forget it. This is where I want to be. I mean, I can see the reaction of someone who has just had a sip of the drink I made. His face is telling me everything, whether he likes it, he doesn't like it. If he doesn't, it's giving me the opportunity to go back, talk to him, change it. Where would I ever get a chance like this if I was in the kitchen? I wouldn't even know what was happening. And that was the day, I did never go back into the kitchen except my own kitchen. And that was it. But I think the fact that you like something, the fact that it excites you every day, even at a time where learning was difficult because all we had were books. We didn't even have people. Even people was different because nobody was bartending at that time. We had maybe 4 bartenders in the whole country. And even those were just there by accident. We were serving dicks. Absolutely. And even the cocktails, they were making cocktails, but only in 5-star hotels. And those menus were really small, really limited, and sometimes very unexciting. So we didn't have too many ingredients to work with. And therefore, it was super challenging. But I think that was the best part of the journey because it pushed us to kind of look for things that were available and then take a recipe that you've been taught and then learn to twist it with what was available. And I think that was the best part. I think I was just oblivious as a person to anyone looking at me in a weird way. I was oblivious because my entire focus was only on what I was doing. And therefore, I don't know if anyone thought it was weird to see me working behind a bar. But the nicest things that ever happened to me were when women came up to the bar to say, thank goodness, there's someone that we can actually have a conversation with. And so I think, it's a lot. The journey that you take is a lot about what you want from your life, what you want from your career, and how much you can see your vision in the future. And that determines where you will be. And learning for me was the biggest and the most important, most powerful tool that I found Because the more I learned, the more I studied, the more I knew, the more confident I became. I could actually have conversations with anybody because I wasn't afraid to talk about what I was working with. And I think this is the advice I like to give to everyone who wants to be someone, is that you need a tool, and that tool is knowledge. Because that's what makes you confident. If you know what's in the bottle, if you know a little bit about flavor, if you are able to analyze it logically, remember that even if you have no background in science, it's cool. If you learn to use your logic and ask questions and get answers for those, then you'll be okay. But the thing is to learn all the time, because that is what allows you to communicate, and doing a great job on its own is not enough. It's great while it lasts. But if you want to grow and evolve, then it's only knowledge, which means study hard all the time. If you have an opportunity to do courses, please do them. If you want to be in a leadership role, it doesn't come automatically. Because you need to be equipped with yourself, and you need to feel confident that you can take on that role. Which means that every opportunity you get to study is a good one. Even if it's a course, there is a one-day workshop on leadership skills, or a weekend workshop on something. Take time out from work, go there and do that workshop, because that will open up your mind. It'll give you skills that we hated when we were in school and college. I don't know about you guys, but I hated it all. I had no idea why I was doing school. I didn't know why I was in college. Well, I knew why I was doing science in college. I actually wanted to be a vet, by the way, which is the only reason I studied science. Yeah. And struggled through mathematics just so that I could get admission into vet college, which I did, by the way. Then I was pulled out and put in catering college, and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? I wanted to cure animals. 10 years, 15 years later, I realized that we're still doing the same job, just curing different kinds of animals. So I'm going to get below, yeah. So I think, it's important to be part of discussions like this, because you want to share things, you want to motivate people, and you want to give them an understanding of why we need to be there. Because I think women have more power than... I'm sorry, guys. He's seeking me. Sorry. It's the truth, though. Women have far more power over almost anything than any man on earth, because of the kind of things we learn as we're growing. As young girls, we blend with family and friends more than the boys do. Boys get away, they hide, they walk away. We're always there with the family. We're always doing things with the family. And therefore, our communication skills, from little kids to the older people, we have those skills, which means that we can use them. We smile far more than anyone else. Guys have to be told all the time, smile, for Christ's sake, don't just stand there, smile. I'm looking to wait for a smile. But we do it automatically. I think it's intrinsic to us that we smile. It's just there. Our flavor profiles are also way better. Our noses are way better. Our palates are way better. And we are also really, really good at multitasking, because that's what we do our entire lives. We're perpetually multitasking. Therefore, we don't need to be taught multitasking. It's just there in our blood to everything the way answers. Exactly. And therefore, if we were to take all these skills that we actually have, but we forget about them, okay, we put them aside thinking, oh, what's the big deal? Everyone does it. No, everyone doesn't do it. But if we take these skills and we are able to share this across platforms, help people understand that knowledge and studying and doing courses which we disliked when we were kids, but today they make sense to us because we're giving it practical application. And if you do that much, just that much, even if you study online, it doesn't matter where you study, whether you do a physical workshop or you do an online workshop, but constantly, you can actually go wherever you want to. you can reach wherever you want to. And I'm not just saying this, okay, to motivate you. I'm saying this because I was there where you were many years ago. That's true. But I'm saying I was in the exact same place, okay? And from that exact same place, I'm here with you. And the only thing that got me here was the fact that I wanted to get here, and I worked at it, and I enjoyed every bit of it. And I never ever gave it a thought. I didn't even know I was not allowed to work in the bar. It only happened to me so many years later. It was too late to say don't work in the bar. Because when that whole fiasco happened in Delhi, I already been working for like more than almost 20, 30 years. And I was like, now you're telling me not to work? Forget it. It's not happening. So yeah, I think platforms like this, obviously we need more women. Because this is the way you actually, can share. Everyone here has a story they can share. And as we were discussing, that when you come to places like this, it's nice to talk to everyone. Don't just get into your little comfort zone with 2 people around you, 3 people around you. Go out and meet other people because stories and ideas come from there. So, yeah, you can do anything you want. Truly.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing your backgrounds. I think it's really, all of you have a very inspirational story. And I'm sure you will definitely inspire this new generation of women part of the industry. So maybe to conduct a little bit the discussion today, because we're also here to bring solutions on the table. But for that, we need to also understand what are the true challenges that women face in the industry nowadays. And I think we can segregate a couple of different type of challenges, but one of them will be the gender-based challenges. So gender-based, we can consider unequal pay. Women might be paid less. There is way less representation in all the top leadership roles in that industry. So I've seen a couple of numbers recently, and in the hospitality industry, we only have 10% of the women actually in the leading roles. So I wanted to ask you, based on your experience, what is the main gender-based challenges that you might have faced?
To be honest, one of the main thing is the salary. People think that if you're a man or if you're a male, if a man is demanding a lakh rupees, for example, it's a mindset of the people that yes, if he's demanding 1 lakh rupees, there is something that he has, even if he doesn't have good skills, good knowledge, or good managerial skills. People just usually, yes, they give them 1 lakh rupees. But if a woman is demanding the same salary, it happened with me because it's exactly the same thing happened this week. If the woman is demanding the same salary, they keep on asking different questions and they think about if you are not have skilled enough, if you don't have managerial skills, and they also think if we hire a woman as to lead something, then there will be some other perks which they have to give. For example, night travelers. Because in Mumbai, there is a thing that girls cannot work after a certain period of time. As in 9:30, 10 o'clock, girls are not allowed to work. Then if you are giving them, if they are working, then you have to give them transport. So there are these things which people think, and then there is a challenge in hiring. So I would say basically there are a salary is one of the major criteria which I have faced. Okay.
Yeah, I think the biggest, coming from there, the biggest gender-based challenge that, and it's world over, is safety security, right? And India is well known for the lack of the safety and security for women any which ways. In the night time, because you're in nightlife, it's even added on to everything else which exists. So I think overall, things might seem like they are the same, but they are constantly improving. It will improve when more women join the workforce. When you see more women into the industry, even if they're serving, even if they're not necessarily bartending, but they are around, right? It's not a all male staff, all male gender. So I feel it starts from there. I think it starts from visibility more than anything else. So I think biggest challenge for us as an industry is that because we are in nightlife, safety security becomes right. And hence the cost of hiring women by default becomes extra, right? So there is I am exactly on the other end of the spectrum on what she's talking about. And this is a concern that we always have whenever we are hiring women, we already know that, okay, I am obviously paying, we obviously follow the same equal experience, not necessarily gender, but it's a skill and experience job, right? But whenever it comes to hiring women, there's always that question of, okay, there is that 20%, 50% increase, which will happen by default. That is a cost that the company will have to take in. And there are progressive companies, there are entrepreneurs who really believe that they have to take it, and they're taking that decision, right? The case has to made for exactly this, that why we need this. There's actually bars that have women who are working in the night are actually safer. They're actually making better business. They actually get better people. There's a better GNP. There's a mix of men and women both in the bar. All of that happens. It's the same reason why you need night markets, why you need markets to be open in the night. Because if you shut everything down, that's when the PP crawlies come out, Like, if you keep it open, it's well lit, people are outside, you see many cities in the world over there, there are nightlife is very active. So obviously, people who are shady or who are up to something wrong will not be out and about in a very well-lit street. They'll usually be in places which are shut, right? So I think our biggest concern is that it has to be working as an ecosystem. The more people you hire, even if you hire at the base level, starting server, we know that by life cycle itself, we have women who are very less experienced. Now, you cannot ask for the same maid just because you're a woman. Like what she's, it can't be, that is not your reason. That will actually defeat the purpose of, the whole feminist movement. It is not about that. It is about the fact that you have deserved the stripes to be here. If you had 8 years of experience as a bartender, then you should deserve 8 years of, actually a salary that any other bartender who is earning 8 years. So where have you got that experience? A lot of things come at play, right? So I think the visibility part is where the concern is, and most of the time and most of the places that I go to, I'm very, very vocal and verbal about it. And honestly, that is where it starts. So if you go to bars, or you go to restaurants, or you go to any place where you see only men, you should absolutely point it out, which you should say. And I will say that last year I was in a competition in which I was judging. That's okay, I was a girl judging. You have men and women judging. There were only boys in the competition. There were 12 boys in the competition. All India, a global brand, all boys. I had the mic. I went there to thank everybody, and it was great. What an opportunity for everybody. And I said it, and there were some people there who heard me say and found it very wrong. Because I'm like their guest, right? Like, I shouldn't be saying it. And I said, it was great. What an opportunity. We see talent. But it's really strange. There are only men. I mean, we could have had I'm sure there's one girl they could have had just to compete. Let's give some visibility. It is about how can we say that there is no girl. You as a brand should be conscious. Like, even more, like, I feel the consciousness lies in everybody. You should be conscious, I should be conscious, she should be, because she is at a level where maybe she has a team under her. Maybe, you should be questioning this to everybody. So why are there only men today in this room? They're called manels, right? All men, male panels, which you see all the time.
I seriously.
And we've talked about it many, many times in many spaces. So I think start there. Sorry, I'm fully so.
No, it's all good. That's the whole idea, isn't it?
Adding what Meenakshi ma'am has said, that what I faced in my early on career is that the people in the bar underestimating the skill of women. Yes, so we have to prove ourselves more and more to give that we are also capable enough, that we can stand behind the bar, talk to people. But yeah, and there's one more thing that I faced, that I noticed, that is that the people in the bar think that the women are not capable enough, like, to lift heavy weights, or like they can do a long shift hours, they can do a lot of so these all are the things that I have faced in my early career. Yeah.
And are you still?
No, like, we have to work very hard. like consistently, dedicatedly, and we earn that respect gradually. Yeah.
And that's how they see it. I want how they raise. Yeah, question to you because I think you mentioned that you've been in the industry for more than 4 decades. Yeah, that's right. So, as a true pioneer, have you observed like any change in the mindset, the attitudes towards more equality, like gender equality?
I think I'm seeing that, but I also think it's up to us.
Okay.
I find that we underestimate ourselves. We don't give ourselves enough power, and we don't equip ourselves to take on that challenge. I think as you learn, the most important thing, and I say this constantly, is to upgrade yourself constantly. I'm not saying be one of the guys. I don't ever want the girl to be one of the guys. You are not a guy. You don't want to be one of the guys. You are who you are. I know that I worked doubly hard because I wanted to make sure that the guys in the bar never ever said, oh, she leaves all the hard work to us. She just comes there, stands, makes a few drinks and goes away. I did all the heavy lifting. So whether it was bringing crates up, bringing the alcohol up, pushing the trolleys, I did all my heavyweight myself. I didn't at any time ask for help because they needed to see that you were not asking them for help and that you were equally equipped to do whatever needed to be done in the bar. Honestly, once they see how good you are, they actually enjoy it because then they get more smoke breaks.
Yeah, no, that was my experience. All the cleaning part are majorly done by the women only. Because they can go.
I found that they were happy because they could get bigger smoke breaks because they knew that, oh, she'll handle the bar, no problem. So I think, the most important thing is to believe in yourself first. You've got to have implicit belief in yourself and your abilities. And if there is even the slightest doubt, that means it's telling you you need to study more and you need to equip yourself better. And that is truly the only way to break out of that whole cycle of not getting enough respect. I think we need to earn respect and not ask for it. We don't want to be given leeway because we're women. We want to stand there and say, I can do it all. But at the same time, make sure that we build ourselves with the tools that we need so that no one can point fingers at us. So building ourselves up with tools is so important because we already come with baggage. Not just from the workplace, but we have more baggage coming from home. People used to ask me, you started in the year 1981. Why did it take so many years for women to come inside the bar? Even though the law changed in Delhi. And I'm like, why did it change in Delhi? That's the last place it should have changed. What about all the other cities? We're safer. I mean, I traveled alone at night. I didn't even think that I shouldn't be traveling alone at night in Bombay. At 2, 3 in the morning, I was fine. I didn't scare me one bit because Bombay was so safe. I don't know if it's safe now.
No, it is absolutely.
It is? I'm not sure. I learned how to drive only because I realized one day that I'm not sure if I'm safe. So I want to drive myself to work and back. At 3 in the morning, I'm not sure if I want to take a cab anymore. When I was younger, I was really bindas. I didn't care. But I think you have to, understand that you got to equip yourself. If you equip yourself, you don't need to take shit from anybody. And more importantly, they won't give you shit because they can see that you're equipped. So power yourselves up and you're just starting out. Okay? You're just starting out. 2 years. You got a lifetime ahead of you. Power yourself up.
Yes.
Every moment, every opportunity you get, learn. Add. It's never too late to learn. I'm still learning. I still see so much that's changing. And I still want to upgrade myself because there are so many things the young kids are doing and it scares me sometimes. Then I have to tell them, will you just, in fact, 3 days ago, I was talking to one of my own students to say, hey, how about you do a workshop for me on this weird stuff that you're doing? I need to understand it. So I think, you got to be open. to learning from younger people. You never should get to a stage where you think you know it all, because you can never know it all, because our industry is constantly evolving, constantly changing. And you guys have such great opportunity. You got the opportunity that we never did. Because there was no learning in our time. Even if I wanted to study, there was nothing I could study apart from 3 years of hotel management. That was the height of everything. If I wanted to know what bartending was all about, books. I had a great book, turning point in my life, that book.
Which was
So it was the Trade Awake Bartender's Guide.
okay.
I thank him every day. All right. I thank him every day. He's up there in heaven, and I wish I had met him, but I thank him every day, because if I hadn't read his book, I don't think I would have been half the bartender that I am today. So study is the only thing that will give you that tool, that power, so that nobody can look down upon you. And if you can do that for yourself, that's it. And really, don't ever try to be like the boys. That is no way to prove anything. That is no way. In fact, that will get you into more trouble. Because people are constantly wanting to judge you. But what shows who you are is the vibe that you give out, your body language. The vibe that your body language gives out is what can stop anyone from having the courage to say even one thing against you. And if you have that, trust me, doesn't matter where you go, nobody will ever be able to question why you're standing behind the bar as a woman. So equip yourself is, for me, the biggest learning that I had is equip yourself. Study every day, learn every day.
Right. Thank you for sharing and sharing so much. So I think some of the key points were raised just now. You mentioned about safety. You mentioned about respect. I think you're right. We should not ask for disrespect. It should be something natural that also comes from us. So talking about the safety at the workplace, there were like a recent report from Oxfam India, and still nowadays there is more than 56% of harassment cases happening on the place of work. And among those cases, like 80% of like non-verbal harassment. So that is huge, actually. And I want to know from your perspective, like how can the bar owners, managers bring some solutions, to have a more safe workplace for women? What can be done on that angle?
I can still.
I think, that all we need to hear from the younger. Yeah, we need to hear.
And also, one of the first things like you should do, whenever you're looking for a job, and we talk about it all the time, you should ask the company, what are your policies? Yeah, do you have a policy at all? This is very new to our industry. A lot of the, at least the freestanding hotels would have, probably. Most of the hotels would have policies for that. Specifically women specific or harassment specific, or there will be certain committees which will be there. In freestanding places, you should yourself assess. If you're applying, it shouldn't be just because they are fancy bar or I'm getting. So you should, when you are also interviewing, a lot of times you're given the thing that you are asked. You have any questions? You should take that opportunity to ask these questions, even if they don't have it. At least you put a seed in their head to be like, there should be something. So what are your policy? What are your, how do you deal with these kind of cases if there was to happen? And you would understand from the reaction of the owner of the place, if the manager suddenly becomes defensive, similar to thing like that happens, kind of thing, then you already know that
yes,
there is, maybe they are not as receptive, maybe they are not as easy to understand. So you should yourself have an assessment power, and I feel that is amazing. That is an amazing tool that God already has given moving. Right? We have an amazing sense,
correct,
which we call our self-instinct, right? And I feel like we have a very good instinct. Like if somebody is looking at you weirdly, you know or you know, but there's one person in the corner there who's staring at you for some reason. So if nobody will notice, but you will notice because you have seen that. So there is a thing which you can understand, and you should learn to hone or at least understand this from the communication and say, okay, these are generally good people. Maybe they don't have the policy. Maybe they will make this policy. Maybe I should be the one who can ask for this. Maybe you can understand it from the manager as well. A lot of times managers are very chauvinistic managers. Like, you know that there are, and most of the managers, I wouldn't say unfortunately, but the way the truth is, are males. Generally managers and head of units are mostly males, right? It's also because of the life cycle of women into industry. It's because, I mean, I know 10 years down the line, there will be more women in leadership roles. We already know that, right? There will be, of course, Sonam will get there. I'm sure Deepika will get there. So there will be people who will reach there. But for now, we know that there are only that many. So you have a harder work at working on policies like that. To say, do you have a draw? Do you have these options? If something happens, is there a complaint process? Is there what do they do? What is the precedent? If something like this happens, what do you do? So I feel in starting, just the conversation itself is the first step.
So yourself as a bar owner, what are all the best practices that you put in place to make sure that employees are safe? And
we've had zero tolerance policy for any kind of harassment, and it's not just for women, it's actually across genders as well. We fired 2 people, and I would say one guy is actually right now the head bartender of a very famous bar. We fired him, and I'm not naming anybody, but we did have to fire him because he was fully disrespectful constantly to our assistant manager at that time, and she came up to us constantly. One fine day when this finally happened, it wasn't sexual, but it was very obvious that he was like, who are you to order me around? And I was like, she is the manager. I mean, it's very obvious. Understand the hierarchy of things. And the food chain nation. Yeah, so there was a male and female problem. There was no other problem. But then we realized this person, he won't respect me tomorrow. I mean, I'm like, this is going to go on. Like, anybody, I don't know how he treats juniors, because this is a senior who's not getting the respect. Forget about I don't know how he's treating the ones who are just, very young in business. I don't know how he treat them. And this is a head party. Like, there's a precedent you show, you want to be like, these are your senior lot. How can your senior lot be like this? I understand the juniors are loving and they get the ropes, they understand, or maybe don't understand. Their families are different. A lot of them, unfortunately, in India, we do come from very male-dominated patriarchal families. Men are given 2 glasses of milk a day, and women are not. It's funny. It's true. Yeah, and we have that, and we have women get one chapati, which is roti, and men are like, beta, please eat more. And we're seeing that. This is our reality. We're not talking, some foreign policies. So since we have grown up like that, I understand the people who reach there then actually think that, how is this girl who... And she was given all sorts of reasons. She was told that, she's an alumni of my college, and she became the manager. She used to come up to me and tell me all these things. So, man, they don't want to do... They think that I got the job because I'm an alumni from your college. So I was like, I don't know what to say to that. I was like, you have to deal. This is your battle, not my battle, honestly. But you have to find a way to deal with conversation. I can't get into it and say, no, she got hired because I found these 10 things which worked.
But I think you're putting your finger on something really prominent. There are some very strong cultural expectations for
zero tolerance policy is the first one. And of course, that the safety, we are in Delhi, we are in NCR, we understand that all women should be, have to get home safely. So we have that. We've always had a very clear-cut communication between our team members and the managers about if anything is happening, it should be immediately escalated. So things like that, yeah.
So there are certain companies right now providing jobs. Women are giving menstrual leave for 1 day, 2 weeks. And there are certain companies who are also as in taking all the safeties and securities into consideration. And there is a panel set. If a girl or woman has a problem, they can go and just talk to them, and then the things can be sorted out. For example, my company is very strict about posh. Even if it is a boy or a girl, because right now things are changing. Even boys are arrested. Boys or whatever reasons. But these things are very taken into consideration and things are taken very seriously. Even if there is a little complaint or smaller complaint, even if it is texting in the night, and if a girl has a problem with it, then things are taken seriously nowadays.
So there is some
Yeah, there are some days speed drops are provided because we work in an industry who works late night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, sometimes closing takes even 3 o'clock in the morning. But companies, some companies, they just say some managers are so nice and so, as in me being a manager, I tell my girls who are there, even if a girl is working in the kitchen, I just tell them that take a drop and send me the bill, we'll reimburse you. So these are the many things which are taken into consideration now. Things are changing slowly, or yes, they are changing.
And I feel it's a cultural thing, right? So it's also about also the other end of the bar. So even the guests in front of you are also equally treated with respect. $0 policy is for them as well. So if you see somebody is getting harassed in front of you, that guest has to keep no matter what, right? So you have those policies to protect the entire space. It is a cultural space protection, not just for the people who are working. It's for everybody to feel safe. Safe space conversation, which are very important. So I mean, those have to happen. There have to be gender bias conversations that should always happen. So we do many things to actually take care of it. But it's I still feel it's a long journey for all of us to reach at a space where I'll be truly happy.
Yeah. So I would say that if the company are having such policies like Anti-Harassment Act policies and everything, so we should also train them. Like we should train them aware the employees that what actually is, like how to report them, how to actually recognize it. Yeah, this is also very important part. And there's one more thing the owners and the managers can do is we can make the confidential ways to report such harassment thing. Okay. So, and then we can also do some kind of a thing like we can provide cabs, like she said, and then cabs, late night drops, and then there should be a CCTV cameras well fitted at every corner in the organization. Yeah, that's all we can beat us.
Yeah. In fact, I'll say that one of the things we got a lot of appreciation for was that we have a safe word in the washroom. So any guest who feel harassed can use that safe word and actually tell the staff member saying that they ask for the drink, which we know if the guest is asking for that drink means that they are not feeling safe. So there is a safe drink name. And what it does is that it makes immediately the women and the men and everybody else aware of the fact that this is you are being watched, or there are people who are anti-woke in the if somebody is up to that, then you also don't want to attract that sort of people anyway, not for your staff, not for your guests, right? So it's a constant evolving conversation, many steps to be taken.
Right. But I am. So getting back on your words, you mentioned many times the cultural barriers sometimes, right? So I believe there is a strong, cultural expectations from the surroundings, the family. Sometimes in India, it's still, something very difficult to imagine women in this industry. So based on your experience and background, like, have you faced any of those? Because I met a lot of women in the industry and they share their stories to me. And I know also sometimes they did not receive all the supports they were supposed to receive. So how was it for you? And share the story.
I come from Bihar, and you know how Bihar cultural background in Bihar is. So when I started working as a bartender, late night shifts and late night timings and everything used to be in place. So my neighbors, they used to ask my parents that ऐसा क्या काम करती है जो सुबह आती है? What is the work she is doing? What is the job profile? Bar में काम करती है. So basically, they used to use this word called bar girl. And in India, this word is not considered as it's not considered derogatory. Then great. So basically, all these things happened, and my parents used to question me that what place are you working that you come late night shifts, and what is this bartending all about? So what I did nothing. I just told them, why don't you come with me at my workplace, have dinner and see what kind of people I'm working with and what kind of environment I'm in. I took them for a dinner at my place,
And there they saw that all the people, even the male, the female, they are well educated, well mannered, and the people where the guests who are coming are also well educated, well mannered, and that's how they realize that yes, the profession what she's working is a good profession, and she's passionate about it. So then later on, when whatever the neighbor and everything and my relatives used to question them or ask them, this was their answer that it's our profession, it's our job, and they're proud. And today also, yes, they are worried about me because I come late night. My mom in the night, she keeps on calling me that where are you? But yes, things have changed and now they are proud of me and what I have.
Yeah. There's a lot of dedication to do, and
Yeah.
then to take care of this.
See, growing up in a family where my relatives and my family were suggesting me to do career which is a nurture giving, or the female role where you should become a teacher or a doctor, or you become a nurse. So I somehow took a hospitality sector, and then after that, during my college days, so my male friends in the where in the interview times, so they were suggesting me you should do a front desk job because of my gender, because I am a girl. You should do a front desk job. So I always said no. This is not my part. I always wanted to do something different, that like bartending or something like that. So that is how I choose in this industry, and I've seen that too often. Women are judged by her looks or by her gender.
Yeah, already. Yeah. There's something I want to add on. Some more interested from but if I see really good amongst the to all lights where I can share my experience and the things I have faced as well. So obviously I also come from a very spot city called Jamshedpur, which is lots bit happier. Okay. So I mean I've been very grateful that my parents were very open-minded people, that they allowed me to do what I do right now, and they're very cool about them. And talking about the sector I am faced in this industry, so it's not been like 3 years I've opted to supposedly. So there was a place I was working for the past 2 years, and I think I've given all my hard work just not to prove that okay, I'm a female, I can develop, because I was doing my job and I could do it there. But ultimately, I was told that okay, you're not good looking enough, or you're not fit enough to get a certain position after working for maybe if they were not giving me an opportunity because okay, I was not capable enough in terms of my knowledge, but in terms of my other things. So I would have appreciated it and I would have worked more hard towards that. But I was being told that okay, we are not seeing in you, we are getting another pool in because you don't look good, you will fit in and things like that. And unfortunately, in a very bad situation, I had to leave that outfit. But now, it's been a year, I started a new outfit, which was Stranger. I did the menu. I handled the entire team of all men. And yeah, so you got a key. This key, yeah, you got a key. It is wrong. You should be late. Why would it feel great learning? It's not unfortunate, but it's great learning. It kind of pushed you into doing something better. Wow, you have been the biggest inspiration because I worked at the first female bartender of the country, so big body, and me being one to stay home. You, Mr. Bush, you to be easy. Good boy, no guitar meter.
Oh my God. It kind of gets to me every single time. I don't know. I'm overwhelmed by this all the time because it's not something I set out to do. You know what I mean? But I'm just happy if I can share everything that I know, and if what I do and what I share helps somebody else do a better job and get something out of it. Seriously. That's the only thing that, makes any sense of what I've done for all these years, because if I can't share it with others, and if others can't benefit from what I've learned, there is no point to my journey at all. So I think it's really important to constantly share, and which is why I really wanted to be here for this, because I think if we can create opportunities for the younger generation, listen to their voices, because their stories might be different from ours. I mean, some of us have been fortunate that we grew up in an atmosphere which allowed us to do what we wanted to do. But I think that these kids are braver, because I've met so many who have come with dreams from really small cities and are going out there and doing amazing things. If we can kind of contribute to making them even better, to giving them opportunities and learning that will allow them to rise and do great stuff, I think, we should. Because I think it took them a long time. I still remember, even when I was doing my show on TV, people would ask me, और कुछ नहीं किया आपने? सिर्फ यही चीज क्यों किया आपने? I'm like, why not? Yeah. There's so much hard work I had to put it to be here. It didn't come overnight. Nobody gave me a gift. It was learning. I had to slog and slog and slog. And I know how many hours I've worked. I used to work 12, 14, 18 hours a day sometimes. And for, like she said, from weeks on end without a break, without an off day. My daughter says, she laughs at me, I laugh at her also and say, why are you complaining? You got 5-day weeks, for Christ's sake. I didn't ever get a 5-day week. And most of the times I had no day weeks. And she says, no, we think we should have 4-day week. Okay. French. People like the French.
We need more French people than us.
Even now I don't have them, yeah?
Yeah.
But now I have the luxury of saying I'm not going to work today.
Of course.
Yeah, that's actually exactly one of the topics I also want to dig in, because you are mothers as well. So it's really important to talk about the work-life balance, especially in this field where its schedule is not so easy. Most of the time you work late nights, you work on the weekend, you work a lot and all the time. So how did you manage to find a balance? Did you actually find a balance? How did you deal with having a family life, personal life, like work life?
I'm very good.
Did you had some?
Go first.
Did you had some support? How did you do?
Yeah. No, I mean, personally, I've had an interesting journey. When I did my hotel management, but that was in the Air Force, so travel everywhere, lived everywhere. When I got into after hotel management, I started Bhatia with Segilia, Odysseys. I got really excited. I was like, this is it. This is my calling. Taj management training program. I was like, I have to be at Rix. This was my dream bar, all of that happening. And nothing happened. It was just went crashing down and went back to private parties. And then private parties started happening. At that time, my parents stopped talking to me for about 8 months or 10 months. They didn't talk to me. Not talk at all. So I was living outside with a friend of mine. Both of us were bartending. This is in Delhi. And I was doing a course from Young Dupes, cocktails and drinks. I was doing a 6 months course at that time, and I was also working as a bartender. And you earn very little money, and all the money you earn is usually just spent on food. Pretty much that's your life, right? So, and you're paying rent. And so 10 months, my parents didn't talk to me, and then I think they realized that I'll be at it. I'm not giving up. And I think they came around one day. They came to meet and said, "How long is this madness will continue? Like, you were supposed to become a manager, you had a coat and a tie," and they were very proud of it. And suddenly, you're working in a bar, coming home at 4, 5, 6 in the morning. What is this? Like, they were completely very upset. And it took them time, and it took me time to constantly tell them, this is not happening, this is how it will be. And that was my journey with my parents. I feel like, we all have had different journeys, and we all can't say, oh, you had it easier, you had it tougher.
Exactly.
I think you all had our own ways and means of where we come from culturally also. It's very diverse. Cities are very different from small towns, and vice versa, all of that happens. Coming to finding a life partner, I met someone and when I met him, one of my first conversations initially was the fact that, see, I work in the liquor industry and this is my job and this is who I am. A good thing was that he was always very open-minded. He believed, and I feel I think love is one thing, and the love, all you guys were not married. Love is not enough. Okay, there's a lot of respect you need in relationships, and you first respect yourself, and then look at the person and be like, does he or she respect me? My partner has to respect me, and if your partner does, then they will give you the space to breathe. They will see this is your passion, this is your love, they need to do this. And I feel that's where the work-life balance conversation starts. If you find a partner like that, you're damn lucky. Because then after that, you know that it'll be tough still, it'll be very tough. There'll be outside of your unit, there'll be other people, there'll be people who will ask you what is going on, how late is this, what is going on, how it will happen. People will always talk. Okay, there's a very famous Hindi saying, कुछ तो लोग कहेंगे लोगों का काम है कहना. Okay, there's a very old song, okay, which basically means people will always say something because their job is to say things. But it's your job to not necessarily always take it as the rule, right? There are no rules in that. It's your dream, it's your life. Now you have it. You only have one shot at this, right? So you shouldn't go after somebody else's dream, somebody else's rules, somebody else's life. And I see this to a lot of younger people, including our own family members, who are like, who sort of, marriage is about sacrifice. And like, I get it. I get the compromise conversations that, you will live in city, all of that. Those are different things. But the basic things have to be in place. So I feel like find a partner who supports you in that space, which is key. Right. And if you feel that this partner is not giving you that space, that is your first red flag. First red flag is that this person will not let me do anything after marriage. If they're questioning me right now, I don't know what's happening when we get married. And when you have a child, God save you. That's not helping. So I think that's where the balance starts. And then of course it's never easy. It's tough. A lot of sacrifices. I had a baby. When I had him, he's now 7, so I won't call him baby, but back in when I had my son, it was tough. It was very, very tough to have that time of throughout maternity. I was working. I remember doing a cocktail workshop with my 7 months. It's just a fun picture. I love it. Like it's an empowering picture for me. I'm not drinking, but I'm talking about cocktails. I know this. My baby is also learning to shake speech. And in India, you don't know the gender. So I was hoping it was a girl. But anyways, I have that. I've always wanted a girl. It turned out to be a boy. I still love it. But a question. And the fact that I was there and I had a partner who was there for me. And all of this, even today, now today's school is, for example, our schools are shut. Just I'm giving you today's example. Schools are shut because of the pollution. And my husband said, you have to go to this. I will do the online schooling today with him. And I'm really glad that I have a partner who said that without me saying, will you please stay today because I have to go to this modern living. That's okay. Correct. But I'm grateful. No, I'm not grateful. No. There's no such word. No, he's not grateful when I stayed. So he's taking me for granted. So we have to, when we say things like, I'm very thankful for a husband like that, I'm grateful for this, I just feel like I made a very scientifically right choice, where it's not just love, it's also many things that come at me. I also saw his parents. And how they part, that's just not compromising. Yeah. So I feel, balance comes with people in mind and choosing the right people in your life.
Absolutely.
Ooh. So yeah, this is more interesting.
Well, honestly, when I look back at my life, I think that my entire life has been about reinventing myself and reinventing the game. At every stage in my life, I've had a point where I've reinvented myself to meet what I needed from life at that point in time. And that's how my work-life balance also fell into place. So up to the point when I didn't have a baby, I was cool because it didn't really matter, right? because I had a husband who worked in hospitality as well. So we both did really weird hours. There were occasionally times when we both finished at the same time and we would actually meet at one point and go home together. Yeah. But we had different off days. It was constantly evolving game. But then when I had my kid, we lived alone, right? And I thought to myself, now what's going to happen? And then I was a little weird in a way that I was rebellious and idealistic at the same time. So I rebelled against everything, but I was equally idealistic. So my idealistic side said, if you're going to have a baby, then you need to raise that baby yourself. And the nannies won't work. Maids won't work. Occasional help from parents is okay, but parents are not meant to raise your kid. And so I went into this little loop. And so I decided I'm going to stop working. I don't know whether it was a wise decision, but it was a decision that I made that I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to raise this baby. I'm going to look after this baby, 100% me. For the first 6 months, I had no time, okay, to think. I was just constantly there from morning to night. My husband was a workaholic. He used to leave home in the morning, come back at odd hours of the night. I used to be alone with the kid at home. And then by the time I kind of got used to the routine and I actually had time for myself when my kids started to sleep, is when all the thoughts came back, say, oh God, what have I done? I've stopped working. First time in my life that I wasn't earning money on my own and that I wasn't self-sufficient, and that started freaking me out a little bit. And I said, now what do I do? My father gave me a computer. Computers had just come into play, by the way, at that time. And he decided that he was going to upgrade his computer, so his old dabba came to me. It was a little old box, massive thing, with a black screen where there was this thing that went beep, beep, beep all the time. And he said, well, here it is. Since you're at home now, maybe you can use it to do things. And so I thought, what can I do? He said, okay, how about I write down everything I know? How about I had diaries where I used to write things, recipes, not just drink, even food. So I said, okay, let me start feeding it into my computer. At that point in time, I had a friend who had just joined the liquor company. He worked with Permit Sales. And he said, hey, I'm launching this new white rum. Can you help me, please? So what do you want me to do? Saying, I need to know what to do with this white rum. He was an IIM person whose mind only worked with strategy. He had no idea what to do with the liquid, apart from just drinking it straight. That's what they did. They just drank and, well. So I said, okay. So I wrote an entire little booklet for him on the cocktails he could do with that liquid, on technique, shaken versus stirred versus built up, on how to rim a glass. And I thought to myself, oh, sheesh, after I wrote the whole thing and gave it to him for free, because he was he was my letter friend, he, of course, got pat on the back and all that, wah, wah, kya baat hai, and all that. I realized that, sheesh, if I did it for him, I should do it for everyone else as well. So I started putting even more information into my computer. I broke it down. I said, oh, but all these people are constantly asking me questions about wine, about whiskey. So all the questions that I had, I started feeding it into the but the turning point came when I was reading the Midday and Saturday Times, all those glossy pages, Sunday Midday. And I found somebody had written an article on wine, which upset me no end. It was a very supercilious article. It was looking down on people who did not understand wine. And I was thinking to myself, if you're going to write on wine, why are you looking down on people who don't understand? You should be telling them what to do with it and not looking down on them and looking down on people in general. And it really upset me no end. It also kind of hit home because the guy said that drinking bad wine to begin with will never allow you to appreciate good wine. it's like growing up on a diet of comic books. It will never allow you to appreciate good literature. And that pissed me off. That really pissed me off. And I said, I read comic books. I read other books as well. I can appreciate literature. How about literature may not need to be appreciated? I read Shakespeare. I thought he was rubbish. Sorry. It's true. I read a whole book. It had short stories by Shakespeare. I read them all and I realized that there were only 4 stories. The rest were rehash of the same theme. And I said, oh my God, it's okay that I don't read Shakespeare. I survived without Shakespeare. I think James Bond has far more to say to me than Shakespeare ever did. And so that got me into saying, I can do better than this. So I actually sent a fax to the Mitte editor to say, hey, are you guys interested in good stuff? I didn't think they'd reply, right? But the editor actually sent me we had faxes then. Wow. He faxed back saying, what have you got? Send me a few samples. I was like, I hadn't got any samples, better start writing.
90s or 890.
Early 90s. Yeah, early 90s. And so I said, oh, shucks, I have to send him. So I said, okay, found a way at the computer. I got some stuff, printed it out, and faxed it back to them, saying, well, I can do more, but it's just to give you an idea. And they said, oh, let's meet. So I went to the editor's office, and they said, oh, sounds like a plan. Can you do an article every alternate week for Sunday Midday? And I said, yeah, I can. And we'll send a photographer and he'll take pictures. Is it cool? So I started writing and the people who taught me how to write were not these great literary artists. The people who taught me how to write were P.G. Wodehouse, James Herriot, Enid Blyton, Ian Fleming, Peter O'Donnell. These were the big 5 who taught me how to write. Because they wrote in a way that connected with people. And I realized that if I cannot connect with my audience, then whatever I write will be a waste of time. And I thought of everything that people asked me while I used to work on the floor. And I gave answers to those. And I wrote in a language that people did not find intimidating. And so I reinvented myself with the same knowledge that I had to start writing that gave me an alternate career while I was looking after my baby. From that, it led to me writing for the trade journals of our industry, talking to bartenders and to people from the F&B space, which led me to write a few pages on the Alcobev industry, understanding Alcobev from the hospitality perspective and the marketing perspective. So I spent 6 years writing while my baby was growing up. It didn't pay me enough. And at one point, I realized I needed money because I didn't like to ask for money. And so I actually started working with a company called Time Life Books. They had books for children from ages 2 to 20. I went for a training program and I realized that these books were really good. And I wanted to buy them for my daughter. But I learned the new perspective while reading those books and talking to my daughter. I found that my mind opened up in completely different ways. And at some point, I decided that I'm not cut out for home sales. So I said, okay, how about I go to schools and hold exhibitions with these books? I was motivated because I needed money. And I reinvented myself one more time to actually go out, talk about children's books and how these books influence the mind and open up their minds. And I actually did that for a few years, which helped me a lot because it really paid me better. So I was writing and doing this at the same time. I was then became a trainer for them. And then the year that kind of changed everything for me was 1997. It was the year of Indian independence, 50 years. And I said I should be ashamed of our industry, that 50 years after Indian independence, there was no school that taught bartending. When I started out, I really wanted a school. I couldn't. I couldn't afford to go outside because, like a fool, I got married and I didn't have the courage to go and ask my father to send me abroad to study. So I said, no, I have to teach myself. But in 97, that is almost 16 years after I started bartending, there was still no school teaching bartending. And that's what changed my life. And I said, I have to do it. If nobody's doing it, I might as well do it. And that's when I started teaching. I started Stir first for 2 years as a platform where we had a 2-day discussion on topics that were relevant and a bartending competition across categories. And after 3 years of that, in 2000, I started the school. So I reinvented myself one more time as a teacher. People who knew me from college looked at me and laughed and said, "You teach? Are you crazy or something?" But I reinvented myself and I learned how to teach. My first lesson was, don't do anything that you hated when you were in school and college. Make sure that you never do what you hated. And that's how I learned how to teach. And I think it's just a constant evolution where you find the balance. So I still stayed at home, but I still was able to do bits and pieces. And as she started growing up and going to full day school, I had more time to work. And then she was old enough to go and spend the weekend with my parents. So I could work weekends. And the most difficult decision that I ever made was at age 10 to send her to a boarding school. I had prepared her all through. And I told her, it's not because I don't want you in my life. I want you to have a better life. Because in Bombay, I can't do anything for you. There's no room to play. There are no playgrounds. I can't be the mother that goes from point A to point B to point C saying, baby ke liye, I didn't have those luxuries. कि गाड़ी और ड्राइवर लेके बेबी को यहाँ ले जाओ और ये स्कूल में ले जाओ, इनको ट्रेनिंग के लिए ले जाओ. I didn't have those luxuries. So I thought the best thing for her to have a wholesome growing up life and study and sports and space balance was to put her into a boarding school, which was not very far away. It was a 4-hour drive, 4-hour drive from Bombay, where I could see her every 2 weeks for a weekend. And that's what I did, and that's when I started working full time. I don't know whether it was right or wrong, but I was there for that weekend. Didn't matter how much work I had, I spent that weekend with her when I was allowed to. Honestly, I went through a little reflective stage. Just 2 days ago, I sent her a message. She's 34 now, by the way. But I actually sent her a message saying, if you were to reflect on your life and mine today, would you say that I was there when you needed me the most? Or do you think that I was so busy with work that I wasn't there at all? And she called me to say, what the hell is wrong with you? Are you going through a crisis again? And I was like, no, I'm not going through a crisis, but it just suddenly occurred to me that I should actually ask you this question, because I've never really asked you this question. That did it put you on a path that made your life more difficult? And did me being me overwhelm you or put pressure on you? Because after doing mass media, she went back to being a chef. And so, that was like a weird work-life balance kind of thing, that even though I knew I put in a lot of effort and I tried to make sure that she never felt that work came first for me, I still, after a lifetime, I felt the need to ask her this question. And what was young? She said, no, I'm glad you did what you did. I just realized that I don't have the same drive that you have. But you never overwhelmed me ever.
I think there's no right and wrong. We just try our
Just try our best.
try our best. And you already have so many exigencies all the time from society and you back.
So like,
All I can tell you is if you have a vision for yourself, no matter what, you'll get there. I have an example of that, and I didn't realize it. There was this kid who was growing up in my building, and while I was at home, right, he kind of practically grew up in my house because his house was very strict. So he would come to me for help for schoolwork, for homework, for extracurricular, for making charts. So I would help him do all his charts for school projects. And he at some point must have asked me to write in his slam book. And 25 years later, he framed what I had written in his slam book. He framed it and came and gave it to me on my birthday. Because one day I said to him, I don't know what the hell I've done with my life, man. I don't know. I think I've missed out on so much and I still need so much to do. And I don't know how I'm going to do it with work-life balance, as you call it. Because I was trying to balance my family. I was trying to balance my husband's family. I was trying to make sure that my extended family didn't feel that I was not there for them. At the same time, I wanted to make sure that I kept my friends because they were so important to me.
Right.
And yeah, it can be tough. But I think if you know what your priorities are, because I had friends who would say, you should have done far better than you did. And I'm like, if I had done far better than I did, would you still be my friends? I wouldn't have had time for you guys.
It's all about priorities. So
It's all about priority. I think, you just have to figure it out. Sometimes you will question yourself and
Yeah. And I think
since I'm doing that now,
women go through get far stronger, perhaps in many different.
yeah.
I mean, you will never appreciate any man who has a child. You will never ask him what is your work-life balance costs. This question does not. It's only the question is asked to women, given the fact that you're expecting women to take more role on. Like in spite of earning maybe the equal amount of money and bringing the same amount of bread and bake it home, you're still expecting women to also balance home, right?
Yeah.
So our chat about guilt, right? There is a guilt, solid guilt that I missed our son's PTM, and I remember feeling terrible. Like I'm promising him on the phone, saying I'll take you here, I'll do this, I'll do that. And then I realized, what am I doing? It's okay, I keep myself okay. No, it was not he was alone handling PTM. Somebody turned up, his father was there, his grandparents were there. That's more than enough. I'm like, why am I putting myself into this space of constantly making me feel like, I'm a mother, I didn't turn up for something. One PTM, which is every quarter now happens, it's okay. So then you have to also relax a little bit to be like, it's that.
And the only people who asked me these questions were guys. Yeah. About, you could have done so much, but you always shy away. You're always pulling back. And I used to constantly say only one thing to them. You have a wife. Find me a wife and I'll do more. Because for everything it was, who did that be a wife?
Yeah.
Who did this wife? Who was handling all the other work wife? I'm like, where's mine? Find me one. I need a wife. Yeah, if I had a wife, I would have probably done more.
This is very true. Behind every successful man, for sure there is a wife. I also think behind every successful woman is also a man or a woman, whoever the partner is, but it is that.
there's one mentor for sure.
Sure, yeah, it's not, we can never say this that very confidently I did it all on my own, especially if you've had a child.
No way.
It takes a village.
You cannot do anything on your own. You can be focused enough to get what you want, but I would never have survived if I didn't have all these friends. My God.
They take care of all.
I would never have survived without my friends. Honestly, They were the backbone of everything that I did. They were my guinea pigs for everything. They cussed at me like crazy. Even my family, they would, sometimes pick up a glass of water and look at me and say, "Am I doing this right? Wait, what are you doing to me? Oh, am I holding the glass correctly? Is it right? Am I sipping it correctly?" It was all in good faith, huh? It was because they loved me and because they were proud of what I did. And even today, they do this all the time with me. But I'm saying that thank God for them. Thank God for that. Because who would have I experimented on? Who would have drunk all my cocktails and I was still learning and experimenting? I would make them drink it and I wouldn't give them a choice. They would sit there and I would, okay, try this, try this, try this. When I was working on my first book, after they tried everything, I had recipes which I had written out. I would give it to them and say, "There's the table. Everything is there. This is your recipe. Go make a drink. Follow everything that I have said word for word and go make a drink." To make sure that if I gave them a recipe, would they be able to produce a drink that was drink worthy? And only who would do that for you, yeah? Except your best friends. They're the only ones who would actually sit up with your nonsense.
Silas, we have this famous quote, yellow.
No, the yellow cover was the new one. In COVID, 2020.
Talk about the year before.
My first book was 1999, 2000.
But yes, I mean, I don't know if it's a common quote in English, but that is in French to say that we cannot choose our family, but we can choose our friends as family. So
Absolutely.
it's really important to surround ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Surround yourself with supportive people. Like either it be at work, if you find a boss or a colleague who is questioning your integrity or saying, "Don't you have a child? Don't you have in-law?" Like you will realize that they are coming from a space where patronizing. Or
Yeah.
they are doubting your experience or your space. So you should find people around you in workspaces and friends.
Yeah.
In all environments. You should always, you are aware of the fact that this person helps me and supports me and this person actually puts me down.
Yeah.
Even if they think they're joking, but they are sometimes putting you down.
Yeah, you should. So, you shouldn't tolerate it.
You should be aware of the fact that it's all,
Don't ever tolerate it.
yeah.
Don't ever tolerate it. Absolutely not.
I'm really sorry. We're actually running a bit out of time. So there are already like a couple of topics that we will have to skip, but it's more discussion for the next time in Mumbai, definitely. So I just wanted to have a quick, closing questions with every one of you. So just give me a very honest and spontaneous answer. So I'll start with you, Deepika. Who is your biggest inspiration in the bar world?
Okay.
First person.
So I would always say that my biggest inspiration is Nitin Tiwari. Because I first met him in my college, who introduced me to this bar industry, and he told me about his bar school, and I joined that, and where I learned all the basics like fundamentals of the bartending, and I also got to know about that how this industry runs and works. So that's how, and what inspires most, what inspired me about him the most is that he is very humble. Like despite being the star of this industry, he is very humble, kind, and very polite while talking to anyone. And he's like very hardworking man also, because he like he is not he like excel in every aspect of bartending, and social media platform as well. So
Oh, he's a star there.
He's a star.
He's a star there.
And just to make a bracket on what you're saying, I think like indeed as women we have to elevate each other all together. But since it's also a male-dominated industry, we should also consider males as our allies. And I think Nitin also is working really hard to elevate the women in his community. So, I understand, guys. Okay.
And he also emphasized one thing, that we should not drink alcohol to get drunk. We should drink alcohol for its taste, to get to better about the alcohol. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I'm sorry because you're absolutely right.
Okay, so these are the qualities that I like about him the most. Yeah, and I always wanted to inculcate in my behavior or in my life journey near future. And
That's a
Okay, I'm jumping to you. So, Sonam, can you tell us what is the proudest moment of the career?
Actually, there have been many. There have been many proud moments where I wanted to achieve something and then I've done it. And the one of the proudest moment is now as well to sharing a stage to women who have like been an inspiration and sitting with them and being into this chat is also a proud moment. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm jumping back to you now. So, what would be the advice that you will give to your youngest self when you started?
I would say that oh wow, there's like this is so much advice to be given. I would actually say that be more patient. I know in today's world, any which way, like patience is a huge problem. Like in our world with everything digital, you can order anything in 10 minutes right now, and it will come to the store, which is crazy. But it's reality, right? It's the reality. It wasn't true, but even then, I feel like I was always more impatient than normal, and I always thought that I wish I was a little more patient in a few things. And while there are no regrets, I don't feel there are any regrets. But I would say that having the ability to listen more and soak in more would have been an amazing thing. But yeah, this diary to self, note to self.
All right. So the last question, Shalvik, can you tell us, like, at the end of a very long day of work, what will be the perfect drink that you serve to yourself?
To myself?
Yes,
Whiskey.
whiskey.
A good single malt or a bourbon or even a blend. A good whiskey. Wow. Because it depends on what happened to me that day that would kind of dictate which whiskey bottle I will take.
Okay.
But yeah, I think, yeah, whiskey.
Nice. Thank you all.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you so much for your time and participation in this round table. Obviously, like, this is only the start. Today we're launching the community. So I will also invite every one of you to join our LinkedIn group. That was one of the topics I actually wanted to discuss about. So we started to create different platforms, but one of them will be LinkedIn, because we also had internal discussion, and I think LinkedIn today is really important as a professional platform, and we'll try to communicate as many networking opportunities on that platform. For more like inspirational content, we will use Instagram. So we already have this broadcast channel that I invite all of you to join as well. So now we have like 2 hours left. We'll just, invite all of you to connect with each other, share your insights, and we actually forgot a couple of activities. We have this little collaborative painting at the back. So I will also invite you before leaving to just leave a little mark or a little, supporting message for this community launch. And also, like, we have a card games, a ice-breaking card games. So I will give you some cards, and you can also keep this as a memory. And at the back of the studio, we have a buffet. So please help yourself. And thank you again for coming today.